Man makes machine, and machine sometimes disappoints man. And you are watching the brief, like I earlier mentioned. On today's edition of the program, the newspapers are focusing on so many issues, including the crisis in the northwest and southwest regions of the country and the crisis plaguing fake food, as we await the verdict of the Court of Arbitration for Sports. As we are told, we shall tell you more on this very burning issue regarding the election of Fecafoot, whether the election of Eto will be cancelled. We shall tell you more on what the newspapers are saying regarding that issue on today's edition of the program. Bomotongina Gladys is here. Let's really find out what she gathered for us in the French language newspaper. Bonjour Gladys.
Bonjour Lasha, bonjour à vous et merci une fois de plus de rester fidèle à Debrief, votre émission bilingue de revue de presse sur ma Média Prime Télévision. Alors ce matin, nous allons débuter avec le journal Le Jour qui nous parle ici d'hygiène et de salubrité au Cameroun. En effet, la ville de Yaoundé est sous les ordures. Depuis quelques semaines, les quartiers de la ville parlent des personnes atteintes de maladies mentales et errantes au Cameroun. En effet, le journal nous révèle que le docteur Mengene prend en charge 312 malades mentaux en un an dans la ville de Yaoundé. Les détails sont donc en page 6 et 7 de ce journal Éco-Santé. Mesdames, Messieurs, c'est tout pour vos titres en langue française. Place à la découverte des titres en langue anglaise avec toi, Lasha Kinsley.
Thank you, Bomotongina Gladys. Let's kickstart this morning with municipal updates. Newspaper municipal update is taking us to Nguti, where the civil administrator or the senior divisional officer in that part of the country has called on councillors to come back or to return to Nguti subdivision and develop that division. We shall tell you more in this edition of the program. We take you to the Guardian Post newspaper. The Guardian Post this morning is focusing on an award by ICT University. The Guardian Post newspaper tells us that fruits of quality professional education, ICT University students win Africa's prestigious innovation prize. And we are told that on course to back $500 million francs CFA, victorious at award halt prize competition to take place in the United States of America. Becomes the first university in CEMAC, or the ICT University is the first university in CEMAC sub-region to win the Holt Prize, which has been described as a Nobel Prize for students. More details on page 3 of this edition of the Set newspaper. Let's talk about FECOM staff that has hailed GM's management style. Workers and retirees of the Special Council Support Fund for Mutual Assistance, FECOM, Sunday used this year's International Labour Day to showcase praises or to shower praises on the General Manager Philip Camille Aqua. The GM was praised for what the workers referred to as their boss family-style management, stating that he considers and treats every staff as a family member. More details in this edition of the Set newspaper. Let's talk about press freedom on this editorial column of the Guardian Post newspaper, talking about press freedom not only for journalists. Tuesday, May 3, 2022 was World Press Freedom Day, and Cameroon commemorated with a global conference in a hybrid format held in Ponta del Este, that's Uruguay. The theme was journalism under digital siege. The digital siege, as we are told by the Set newspaper, that was the theme of this year's International Press Freedom Day. More details on page 4 of this edition of the Guardian Post newspaper. We leave the Guardian Post newspaper. We are with the Post Weekender. The Post Weekender newspaper this morning is focusing on a headline that has to do with a verdict that will be delivered by the Court of Arbitration for Sports in Switzerland. Fear looms over possible annulment of Fecafoot election by TAS. Calls Mount for BIA to intervene and save Eto's Fecafoot for interest of Cameroon football. And the paper also tells us that observers blame Eto's entourage for failed plot to knock out Abdurrahman. More details in this edition of the Post-Weekender newspaper. On the World Press Freedom Day, Kamasech creates fund to salvage journalists in emergency situation. The Cameroonian Association of English-speaking journalists, Kamasech, has created a fund dubbed Kamasech Emergency Assistance Fund. The fund, according to the paper, is aimed at sustaining journalists caught in emergencies. The fund launched on May 3 in Yaoundé during the commemoration of the World Press Freedom Day, aims to cover journalists in health emergencies and to provide legal support to journalists peaceful or journalists prosecuted because of their work. And the fund, as I earlier mentioned, is also expected to provide prison support to journalists who have been detained and to provide an aid to journalists who go into exile because of their work. More details in this edition of the said newspaper. Thank you for watching, televiewers on My Media Prime Television. We are back in the studio to continue with our discussions this morning. Maitre Alex Ndive is joining us as usual. Good morning, Maitre Alex, and welcome to the program.
Good morning, Mr. Lasha. Good morning, Gladys. Good morning, your entire team. Good morning to the beautiful people of Cameroon. I can hear you, but don't be surprised from time to time if I ask you to repeat the question. So thank you. Always a pleasure to be on your program.
Yes, Maitre Alex, let's begin with this headline that was captured by some newspapers yesterday, and we still have it in some newspapers, where a civil administrator is asking the population to use witchcraft in chasing away separatist fighters in a community in the southwest region of the country. What do you have to say to that?
Yes, Mr. Lasha, what I would say, I'm very surprised, and it beggars belief that a Jew, an administrator, somebody who is supposed to uphold the law, is asking people to commit crime. In Cameroon, the penal code, in section 551 says witchcraft is a penal offense, and people who commit witchcraft, they could have as far as 2 to 10 years imprisonment and a fine of 5,000 to somebody attacks and I defend myself. There is a cooling period in self-defense. If somebody comes and slaps you and walk away, then after 4 minutes, you run after the person to slap the person. That's not self-defense. Self-defense is when somebody is attacking you at some point and you react immediately. That's self-defense. So when an administrator tells you to go and attack people and use the word witchcraft, which is a criminal offense in the Cameroon, that SDO should be suspended and be investigated with immediate effect.
Maitre Alex, how do you prove an act of witchcraft in court? You are a lawyer. Have you had such cases that you have to defend people in court? How do you prove an act of witchcraft?
How do you prove an act of witchcraft? To be honest, I'm telling you, there's a law in Cameroon, and they know how to do it. I cannot sit there to tell you what is it. We know what is witchcraft, is mystical power or whatsoever. They have evidence. People use certain type of thing. We know what's witchcraft in Cameroon, and there's a particular definition of a witchcraft. And people who do that, they say they are witch doctor. So you can prove it on maybe feel of a country, is a leader of a country, is a politician. And in accordance with FIFA rules, politicians are not supposed to meddle with politics. Although recently, I know FIFA have been meddling in the Ukraine matter, which is wrong. But normally, what happens, FIFA don't allow politicians to...
They are trying to see if they can send him away.
If I should get your question clearly, my point is simple. But insofar as some of us will love Eto, we should stop personality call. Eto is head of FECAF. He was elected. And normally, there should be people who should be scrutinizing Eto. We cannot just sit and think Eto is a god. We should make sure that he's doing the job well. And there are people who are likely to challenge Mr. Eto maybe in 4 years' time. So we should be used to that. People have to criticize us, maybe constructively, not just because they want position.
But,
Maitre, ils veulent enlever à
yes, Abdurrahman wants the election to be cancelled. So we are not talking about scrutinizing what Eto is doing. We are talking about seeing his team leave Fecafoot.
It is your right to protest. What are they protesting for? If they are protesting for working condition or money that have not been paid, it is their right. But what I will say clearly, there is something happening in Cameroon because we cannot have teachers striking, lawyers want to strike, Isakam striking. There is something wrong that the government, Mr. Bia, must state and say, look, something is not going on in this my country. I must look into it and I prevent it because I believe in prevention is better than cure. The government have not been proactive. The government always waits when people complain, they strike before they react. We need a proactive government, not a government that reacts.
Yeah, Maitre Alex, Cameroon Tribune this morning, in one of its major headlines, or the front page, is talking about an interministerial meeting which held at the Star Building yesterday with some ministers concerned with what you just talked about, the teachers' strike in the country. And the PM reminded those ministers, handed further instructions on how they are going to manage the instruction of President Paul Biya regarding the processing of teachers' files as well as payment of their salaries. Do you think something can...
On a le professeur Nalova Lyonga qui a demandé aux régionaux de sanctionner ou bien d'envoyer la liste des enseignants grévistes. Est-ce que ce n'est pas un autre moyen peut-être de frustrer encore plus les enseignants qui sont déjà à ce niveau-ci à bout puisqu'ils disent qu'ils ont trop supporté?
I got you talking about l'enseignant gréviste. I did not get the other part of the question.
You're talking about the correspondence addressed to regional delegates for secondary education by Professor Pauline Nalova Lyonga, instructing them to send to lists of recalcitrant teachers.
Oh, I understand that the minister was saying teachers who are, is it undisciplined teachers?
Yes.
I saw something.
Yes,
like
undisciplined
that.
teachers.
My
yes.
point is, Mr. Lasha, people should stop playing to the gallery. Normally, there are always going to be undisciplined teachers. There is a procedure in schools on our people. I presume Minister Nalova must have read about trade union laws in Cameroon. I believe he must know that if the teachers are following the due process of law, he cannot do them anything. She cannot do anything to them. People should understand that it is normal to strike. He has to find out, are they following the procedure, which is through unions, to ballot and to say they are going to strike. It is okay to do that in a democratic society.
Yes, Maitre Alex, let's go back to a headline that made news a few days ago, and some newspapers are still talking about that. The kidnap of CPDM Senator Regina Mundi in the Northwest region, and the separatist fighters have put tough conditions for her release, and they even forced her, she was under duress, to read a certain speech talking about her resignation and her support for Ambazonians. What do you have to say to that when you watched the video?
I should make this clearly. Senator Mundi to be released. I know her personally, she's like a mother. And I want to make this to those who call themselves fighters or paramilitaries. If you kidnap a civilian passing by, you have to stop fighting and allow them to pass. They call it safe passing. But when you arrest Madame Mundi and try to humiliate her, what I saw was degrading and inhumane treatment. You are not even allowed to take videos and put it on social media. It is still a war crime. So what I want to add, freedom fighter, if you want to fight for the interests of Anglophones, why are you punishing them? Why are you punishing our people? Your fight is not against civilians. Whether you are a Nigerian, you're a British person, you're a Francophone, Anglophone, you're walking in the street, they have no right to touch you if you're a civilian. So at the end of the day, If you want to fight for the freedom of your people, you have to make your people to love you.
The,
My point is, these people are ignorant, they are foolish, they don't know what they are doing. Because if you want to fight a war, you have to know what the Geneva Convention on War. You don't go around saying that they should lock down. Lockdown is a war crime. To say you should make a place ungovernable is a war crime. So when I look at them, they make me, I feel, some Anglophones are the most foolish people on planet Earth.
Maitre Alex, when you talk about what you are saying, they consider some of these people as blacklegs, in quote, people who work for the enemies. That's the reason why they are arresting or they are kidnapping them for ransom.
Mr. Lasha, I've been disgraced by a lot of Anglophones during this 5-year period. We say we are Anglo-Saxon. I live in London. I practice law in London. And when you go, you use word blacklegs. Do these people, do they have dictionary? Blackleg is somebody who is part of something that you're doing. Then you have agreed to do something. Then the person refused to do it is a blackleg. If I've never belonged to your Amazonian association, you're not a blackleg. If you want to be Anglo-Saxon, you want to show Anglophone culture, show that Anglophone culture. Because what they are doing, they are practicing their traditional norms. Then they say they are Anglo-Saxon. No, they are not. I live in England. They are practicing their village culture, then they call it Anglo-Saxon. We should distinguish that.
Okay, Maitre, we should distinguish that. So we are calling on the release of Senator Regina Mundi, and you regret what happened. Anyway, let's move on to talk about this other headline that has to do with World Press Freedom Day. Most often journalists found themselves, or they are caught between, you know, very terrible wars, talking about need for medical attention as well as being detained. And the Association of English-Speaking Journalists in Cameroon launched a fund that is meant to, you know, raise some money that will be channeled to helping journalists in need of medical assistance, as well as, you know, those that have been arrested and detained.
Yeah, if I should understand, you're talking about the fund that have been raised for journalists, assistants, they are being persecuted or they are sick.
Yes.
Okay, my point is simple. Why are journalists raising funds? It tells you that the government is not carrying out its function, because the person or the organization that's supposed to protect our people, the journalists, is the government. It is a good initiative, but when you see a government that cannot protect the journalists, like what happened to one journalist, Azizi, who disappeared. We don't know the whereabouts of that gentleman. I'm not saying that he was right or wrong, but when a journalist disappeared, it's a call for concern that we have a legal system that if somebody commits a crime, they will try the person. I applaud at what the journalists are doing, but still, it tells you that a state who is supposed to protect our people, the citizen, the government is not doing its job.
So how does it work in London?
The problem is, what I will tell you here, in the Western world, the journalists, they regulate themselves. The government does not intervene. They are self-regulated body. Like you saw what happened in Cameroon, a journalist in one of your sister media was suspended. You have a self-regulatory body that you deal with this issue. Journalists like yourself, you regulate yourself. Government don't intervene. That's the difference. And that's what I hope should happen in Cameroon.
Ok, Maître, il y a un autre problème qui a été soulevé. Précisément, le journal La Nouvelle Expression nous en parle ce matin, où nous parle de la condition des journalistes au Cameroun, pour parler ici de la célébration de la liberté de la presse. Des journalistes qui ont des empiles d'impayés, c'est du moins ce que révèle La Nouvelle Expression ce matin. Une profession qui, au jour d'aujourd'hui, semble ne pas être mise.
I'm that type of a person when I know somebody is encroaching on my right. We should stand and speak and fight for our right. If you think the government will come and give you a right, they will never do. And fighting for that right means you have to be persecuted. Some people may go to prison. That's the only way you can get your freedom. Because if you think The government wants you to stand and criticize them or to hold them into account. They are not used to. It is normal that people, journalists, so far as what they are saying is factual, there's evidence. The government should not do anything to them. My point, journalists, they should wake up and fight for their right. That somebody will come and give. I know people are weighing their personal interest. I might lose my job, but sometimes you have to lose that job in order to free other people.
Maitre, how do we fight for financial freedom? Because the La Nouvelle Expression was talking about...
Person will come and cry, I don't have money. So it's very difficult.
Okay, Maitre, thank you so much for taking out time to join us this morning. Though the lines were not the best, but we hope our televiewers got what was important. Thank you for always being there, Maitre.
Thank you very much, and have a wonderful day with your entire team.
A wonderful day to you too, and to our televiewers who are watching us at this time. The program was produced by Christain, Tebong. We were Gladys Bomotongina and myself, Lasha Kingsley. Tomorrow is another day. Bye-bye.